want to intro us
Nope.
for this one since you're bringing the topic?
Nope, because I did not think to do that.
It's very easy. You literally just gotta say, welcome to Check Out This Guy, the podcast where we do our little thing with the OCs. We don't really have a consistent script for it. You can just sort of riff however you want on it.
I can do that. Welcome to Check Out That Guy, the podcast where...
Let's check out this guy.
Fuck.
You don't get to riff that much.
Welcome to Check Out This Guy, the podcast where we do the thing that says on the tin and check out some guys. I'm Spike, and I'm not the only host today.
I'm Morg. My pronouns are they, he, and I am here to listen. Even though I kind of know a lot of it already, it's fine.
I'm Emery, pronouns are they, she, he, and I am the only host today. Anything else is just imagining.
Wow.
Wow, okay,
So I guess Emery is taking over again.
I'm gonna go back to Zelda then.
Yeah, bye guys.
Bye.
Bye.
We're gonna sit here and I'm gonna have a conversation with
With Craig?
with no one. Yeah, with Craig. I wonder if Craig has any OCs. I wonder if Craig is an OC.
I think Craig might be an OC.
They got that little bear avatar.
Yeah,
Did they have a backstory?
I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't be the first robotic bear that I've encountered.
True. Anyway, Spike, what are we talking about today?
That remains to be seen, but I'm gonna characterize this as an introduction to an RPG setting that we're all playing in. The one that has the planet Iso in it. So for ease of reference, the Isoverse. But I guess first I need to talk about a multiverse.
Great, good.
Yeah. So I promised to try to get things mostly correct today. That's the fun of collaborative storytelling. I might get something wrong because ultimately other people have the final say on some things, but this is at least how I'm operating.
I mean, you're here to talk about your character, mostly.
Yeah,
Actually,
I don't really plan to get to any characters today.
Great.
Except for a couple NPCs.
Great, we're already failing the mission brief of the podcast. No, this is good. We love lore.
Yeah. This is lore so that there's a lot of guys we can talk about more freely in the future.
So before we get into that, do we want to just briefly introduce the system we're playing this in, just to have a little bit of context for why the lore is the way that it is?
Okay, yeah, so that's a good idea. We are playing in Fellowship 2nd Edition by Val Mini.
And yeah, Fellowship, it's a PBTA system, very like fantasy, sort of D&D, Tolkien inspired, but it's also very much outside of that as well. Like, you can have like sci-fi elements in there. You can kind of get nutty and do whatever you want. And the reason it always does get very nutty is because world building is collaborative.
Yes, and like I've seen a lot of really bad takes on people looking at the system where they either look at it and say, well, this is useless for anything other than playing Lord of the Rings fan fiction.
I
which
disagree.
Yeah, that's a super hot take, as we'll see. And then the other bad take I've seen was that this is an awful system because it is all about the minutia of inventory management.
No, you're talking. No, those people are just talking about D&D. They got so lost. Why are they posting this on about Fellowship?
The only complaint I've heard about Fellowship, and to be fair, I am not in like the Discord or whatever. The only one I heard was that like, since every person like designs a race, there's like, some like fear of like fantasy racism issues, but like that's always gonna kind of come up if you're doing anything that is based in Western fantasy, just because,
Yes.
even if our game is not very Lord of the Rings, it still has that as like an ancestor, if that makes sense. So
yeah, and that's one thing that I think will be in whatever the third edition is, whenever that eventually comes out, is including some stuff explicitly as if you have control and final say of command lore for a people, you're playing the champion of that people. You're playing like the most important person, but that doesn't mean that people is a monolith.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you have a final say over the generalities.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, also the way it's set up, it doesn't do like the fucking Lord of the Rings thing, or even frankly the D&D thing, where like one or multiple of the races are just the bad guy. Like the bad guy is the overlord, just like one big ol' evil dude, and they don't necessarily represent like a single race or a single people. They're either like a single like fucked up entity with underlings, or like an empire, or what have you.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll get to that, because I am gonna be talking about the remnants of the first people as part of today. But before we get into that, just kind of how this universe works is it's high fantasy, it's high technology. There is way too much backstory now. Because that's how I operate, and I'm the person who has GM'd most recently. Incidentally, our friend Dan is the one who was the original GM, so
yeah,
many props to Dan.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to get Dan and Patrick, our other player, on for guest episodes with regards to ESO.
Yeah, it's us three and those two. It's
one of these days we'll some of us will be able to do a tabletop campaign with Elvira involved. It super doesn't work for time zones right now, but I would love to roleplay with that fool.
Elvira's a great role player. I've only played a couple games with them, but
yeah. Oh yeah, you were in that Wonder Home campaign with them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just kind of fell through a little bit.
As tabletop games tend to, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's honestly a miracle that ours is still going, even if it's on hiatus at the moment. Like, the fact that we still want to go back to it is wild.
Yeah. If we don't go back to it, there will be much wailing and gnashing of teeth. The way the universe kind of works, the magic system in it, or the, like, I guess the physics explanation of how magic works, is that there is a multiverse. like just big infinite multiverse. There's probably some parallel universes, but the biggest thing is there are just completely different universes that have completely different natural laws to them. So you might have what's essentially the plane of fire. And if you're doing fire magic, you are pulling either energy or matter from that universe into the quote-unquote real world. And that's how magic works. There's one of these universes that's very special, though, and that's the Void universe. And it's special because that universe has thoughts and feelings. And it turns out, having chunks of you pulled out of yourself to fuel magic somewhere else, it doesn't like that.
Yeah, because, I guess sort of the way you explained, like, the magic system is, like, we're sort of borrowing, like, power and elemental energies, like, from alternate dimensions when we cast our funny little spells.
Mm-hmm. So the Void doesn't like that, and we'll talk about the Void a little bit later. The other thing is there are some higher dimensional beings, basically gods. And, they're meant to be like, they're not meant to make sense. They're meant to be a little bit unknowable because they are existing in more than 3 dimensions. So they probably are like existing in multiple universes at the same time. And we've met, y'all know that we've met one of them. And that's a funny little fella named Troy. And Troy is a scientist, and I think Morg, you're the only one that's interacted with Troy, aren't you?
Yeah. My character, after some, big event that, we'll probably talk about eventually on this podcast. It's not, a huge thing for what, Spike's gonna talk about, I don't think. But, we all got, separated temporarily, and we all got, teleported to talk to these strong beings on Iso, called dragons, except the one that I talked to is also kind of maybe the serpent from the Bible.
Yeah. Troy is kind of interesting that way. Troy has a very fancy computer known as the Tree of Knowledge.
It's very funny to me that I don't think my character, Vortex, knows that Troy exists or that Treble has interacted with them.
Yeah, so when Treble met Troy looked like a kobold, and, our kobolds, oddly enough...
A tall kobold, which is fucked up.
Yeah, it's just our kobolds are, kind of normal-looking, kobolds.
Yeah, they're, the short little, lizard guys that are, kind of dragony, and we also
some of them have very thick asses, you know how it is.
Yeah. We also have the dog kind of kobold. They're just called bullcolds instead.
Yes. So, Troy appears as a very tall kobold, twice the height of a normal kobold.
And dragon.
So, on Iso, he's done several things. First of all, he is the 0th dragon. Not the first, but the 0th. And he isn't the only higher dimensional being that has interacted with Iso. There's also a underworld and afterlife, and that was originally run by some gods, who I don't think they were probably the same thing as Troy, but, you know, also gods. And so Troy goes around. His goal is to figure out a way to get rid of the void, because the void is going around trying to consume the multiverse, just kind of instinctively going with a eat or be eaten philosophy with what little thought process it has. It's so good that we're talking about this so soon after Ghost Game ended.
Remember how Gulu Scamamon was an alien made of goop?
Yeah. We were talking about the Void before then, though. There's a few things that have come up in pop culture that happened after we did them in the game, and it's kind of funny now. So Troy, yeah, he is probably also the serpent from the Garden of Eden. There is an Earth in this universe, pretty much the same as ours. And on Iso, he created the first dragon, as kind of a test to see if this was something that could be used to fight the Void. And that dragon, was the Argent Dreamer. And the Argent Dreamer is both the first dragon and the first dreamer. Probably not going to talk much about dreamers or at all today, but dragons, they kind of exist in a way that they are something that are necessary for the world to function. They can be created, and they generally kind of will exist forever for the most part, bar kind of heinous circumstances happening. So one of the dragons is what? I'm blanking on the name now.
Which one are you thinking of?
The afterlife one.
Corpse Queen?
Yes, the Corpse Queen. Thank you. So the Corpse Queen, she killed the gods of the underworld and took their place and became a dragon that way. And so there's a few dragons on Iso. I think Iso has more dragons than any other world because that's kind of where they got started at.
Yeah. So, kind of the thing that we landed on with dragon lore eventually is that, you can be born a dragon, and those are the ones that are, the ones you typically think of as dragons, big, scaly, could bite you in half, probably. And then, there are people who, inherit sort of the role of dragon, and those can be sort of whatever.
Yeah. So, there's a bunch of dragons on Iso because Troy kind of just messed up Iso, in several ways. And he messed up, Iso in another very important way, in that, there were some guys on Iso, just some normal mortals, basically human, and they're an entire race of people who suck.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just get that out there first and foremost. So, Troy did his thing, and he kind of helped them accelerate their advancement and gain knowledge. And what did they do with that? They mostly split into two superpowers and had a nuclear war.
Cool.
Yeah, total global decimation, nuked the whole planet.
They went and Mad
whole...
Maxed the place.
Pretty much, except they're not that cool. The thing is, the ones who survived still had all that knowledge. So they kind of set to work. They at least learned a lesson. So they started rebuilding ISO. And they created some fancy little AI robots to go help clean up and rebuild and kind of terraform the planet again. And they mostly focused on the fact that they didn't want to die. So they started replacing their bodies with prosthetics, and it just kept on advancing more and more until they had total body replacements, including the brain.
Very Ship of Theseus.
Oh, yeah, so that's it started out just like replacing parts and then replacing the whole body and then also replacing the mind with it. So, after a while it would just go straight from you had like a normal person and they would transfer their consciousness to their new body. And so, if you have these fully artificial bodies and everything, there's no reason for them to look like a human. That they could be anything. They could be any shape or however you wanted. So isn't that cool? So that they achieved transhumanism. Good on them.
Yay! Congratulations.
Yeah. So maybe good on them. Keep in mind there are whole people who are people who suck. So I guess just a quick aside, bodies and cores, being what it is, their society should be a post-scarcity society. It should be a utopia. However, the businesses that knew how to create the cores, which are the most important part of the bodies, that make all this transhumanism stuff work, they closely guard that and charge out the ass for it.
Fucked up that capitalism still exists in a highly advanced society.
For real.
Yeah, they're hyper capitalist. So the cores are neat. They're they basically are effectively an infinite energy device and a kind of a little miniature factory altogether. There's a couple different versions of how they work. There is like the old crappy version that has kind of this glass-like substance that kind of regulates the power and can be reformed quickly and at will. And then there is the more advanced version that makes people who are a lot more lifelike and more natural. And we've seen both types of these people in the campaign. Emery, would you mind just very briefly mentioning where halflings come from?
Yeah, of course. So, amidst like everyone transhumanizing themselves and then just being like, well, don't need this anymore, and throwing their old human bodies into a big cartoon dumpster. There was like a certain faction of people who were like, well, yeah, but what if we want to keep those, though? What if, living in a trapping our souls in a mechanical prison for all eternity doesn't suit us after a while? What if we want to, like, find a way to preserve the genome of the species so we don't just, like, permanently destroy the biological element of our existence for all time? They were like, well, I don't know, we could like commit our genome to like, computer records, but like those can degrade over time. Also like it would be hard to decentralize. Like, what are we going to do if like our records get destroyed and then the backups get destroyed? Like, so what they decided is, we've got these little mustelid guys. They're all over the place. They're essentially rats, and conveniently they like happen to share a lot of like the same genetic markers as our people. Kind of like rats have like 95% similar DNA to humans or something.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just like, okay, we're just gonna like throw a few extra chromosomes in these guys. Don't worry, it's like not gonna get coded. It's not gonna change how these little guys are at all. We're just gonna have some dormant DNA hanging out in there. So, if we ever, need a new body, we can just pick up one of these little guys and then like make a fully working clone of a remnant body. So then they did that. They essentially just like created a virus that spread throughout the entire population and just like permanently altered the genome of an entire species.
No big deal.
Because they thought it would be neat, and then they fuck off and leave the planet. And then I think it was the goblins who are basically like,
we're skipping ahead a little bit, but yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we got the goblins. They're essentially like the sort of machines of the remnants who like did not start off as organic beings, but were essentially just like computers and robots that gained sentience eventually anyway.
Yeah, the goblins. Well, I still want to talk a little bit about the people.
Okay.
But before we get into the goblins,
right.
But essentially, the short version is the goblins are the descendants of the machines that were being used to terraform.
Yeah, and essentially the goblins were just like, hey, we're a newly awakened sapient species and we love it. What if we spread some of this joy around? So then, like, they found out, like, what had happened to the little mustelid guys, and they were like, hey, what if we did some funny genetic tinkering of our own and essentially, like, modified them with, like, their inserted DNA into becoming more humanoid and sapient? And that's where halflings come from.
I didn't know that last part, actually.
Oh, I thought
that's rad.
Yeah, I thought we did establish that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super rad.
Yeah, kind of my initial idea was like, oh, these changes just kind of happened through random mutation, and like they just kind of slowly became more humanoid thanks to oops, the DNA is getting coded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, I think someone suggested that the goblins had a hand in that, and yeah, I think that's what we eventually went with.
Okay. So reversing time a few millennia back to the heyday.
Rewind noise.
So back in this hyper capitalist society, so if you've had your entire planet decimated and most people died, and now you're just completely replacing your bodies with robot bodies, turns out you're not gonna have many new guys.
Mm-hmm.
So
Not enough guys.
So yeah, the people, and incidentally, I'm calling them the people because they're big enough assholes that they do not recognize the personhood of any race other than themselves. Hate that for them.
They kind of were the only sapient ones in their time, though.
Maybe, probably.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
They could have destroyed them also, it sounds like, because they did have big fight.
yeah.
Fucked up if you think about it.
Yeah. So they focus on one big city, the last city. They basically set this place up to where, they've screwed up the planet enough that maybe they should go somewhere else. And that's also a good way to make sure that, they will always survive. Leave a few behind here, and then most of them just take their whole city and fuck off to the stars. Before they do that, the laboratory where Troy was, they seal that entire complex off with a big, huge force field, and even go so far as to etch warnings onto the side of the mountain, basically saying, never open this place.
Mm-hmm.
Blaming Troy for all the bad things. Cause, it couldn't have been them. So one of the things, about their society, other than being hyper-capitalist, they pretend to be a meritocracy. So what few new people there are, when they're young, they have them do an aptitude test, and that determines, what they're going to do, with their potentially infinitely long lives. There's of course going to be a few who are not going to buy into all of this. So there are a few biological people still. That's the source of any new people. And, they dwindle, the population dwindles every generation, to where it's basically nothing, by the time, they're heading off to the stars. And so this is the point where I will say Xenu exists. Xenu is my special little Blorbo. We will talk about her legitimately later.
Yeah. Xenu's story is kind of ongoing, and in a way that I get the sense that you don't want to bring her to the table fully until some things are resolved.
Yeah. Also, it's just I would speak twice as long about her as about this.
Fair.
And we don't want 3 episodes in a row of this.
Sure we do.
I don't.
Yeah, why not?
Coward.
I don't. I don't trust the audience to like me that much. So anyway, the thing I want to say about Xenu, though, is she took her aptitude test and it came back, essentially, you're good at nothing. You get to be a fast food employee.
Wow, literally me. Except without this different service worker job, but
Uh-huh. She's born a short time before they head into space. She turns 16, and as soon as she's able to, she undergoes the transhumanism process and gets her new body. But it's the cheapest, crappiest thing imaginable. It's basically just a robot skeleton, and it's not good. Her original body at the time was better. That was kind of her state. They took their city and they launched it. And they left a few people behind. It was the ones that they didn't care about at all. So the probably 20 people left in Meattown, they got left behind. Some unimportant people got left behind. The ones that we for sure know about was some like little local administrator and someone who worked in a marketing firm doing graphic design. One thing about them is they're very bad at naming things. And they they have one last city, they name it the last city. They tend to not refer to people by their names, but as their functions. So that lowly administrator gets forever known as the administrator.
You see, the thing about me, though, is that I love giving characters names that are just like a 1 or 2 word descriptor of what the character is. You know, hence most of my guys from the previous episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but do you really want to be known as your job?
No.
If you're at a grocery store stalking, do you just want to be known as the stalker?
No. You know, definitely not on that one. I don't know. There are funnier one-word descriptors that you can use for a person's name other than their job.
Yes, this would also mean that at one point Xunu was known as Cook.
Oh boy.
So they went into outer space and they had created a funny little faster than light drive for their ship, and they used it.
Yeah, FTL stands for funny than little drive.
Funny than little, for true.
Yeah, so they made bad choices though, because this is a magic and tech universe. So the way their FTL drive worked was it punched a hole through another universe to bridge the gap. What universe did they punch a hole through? The Void.
Oh, you know.
Aw, geez. Aw, dang. That's the bad one.
Not only did they punch through the void.
Yeah, so that was the worst choice they could have made. So they test it out just jumping from one end of the solar system to the other. And everyone who remained behind in the leftover part of the last city got to watch the video of what happened next and got to have nightmares for the rest of their immortal lives. As the Void got into the ship, and it's something about this process made these folks especially yummy to the Void. So imagine just like this blobby substance getting on a robot, and then the robot explodes in viscera.
Yum.
Oh, robots aren't supposed to have visceras, though. That's not good.
Yeah. It's not good. It's not good at all. And then this was just kind of a chain reaction as it spread throughout the ship and destroyed them all. Only one escape pod made it out. But yeah, that was extremely bad. So that drew the Void to this universe, and ISO in particular. Luckily it got drawn to the planet where Troy had set up defenses. So dragons kept ISO from being consumed by the Void. There are some awful things in the ocean of ISO, though. There are some awful, corrupted kraken beasts. They're not good. They're just kind of like some giant squids that got corrupted by the void. And like I said, dragons take care of that for the most part, so it's not too bad. So that ship is toast, and everything's destroyed. The few remaining people we will now call the remnants, they decided to go out and search the world for whatever they could recover, because they're all that's left. Like at this time, again, Xenu, very poor, only had skeleton body. But one of the first things that happened was one of the remnants found some VR setups and managed to tell most of the others. And so they just went back to the remaining part of the last city and jacked themselves into VR for thousands of years. And to make sure that they weren't harmed, they put up a force field over the island that the city was on. And, if you were left out, you were left out.
The thing about, the force field over the city, though, you can get into there if you solve a Picross puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seems like it's kind of easy to get into.
No one got into it for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah, maybe Xenu was the only one who knew how to do Picrosses.
Uh-huh. Well, Xenu was the one that got left out.
Yeah, because I guess to explain that a little, literally the second session or something in Dan's original campaign, we went to this location to the bad guy was like, oh, I'll only, I don't want to get into Gillies too much, but the bad guy was like, oh, I'll stop sending my adventurers after you if you get me artifacts from this one location. And Gilly was like, sure, I'll definitely go there and do that, in parentheses lying. So they went there and they had to fucking get around the bad guy's henchmen and get into the city. And the way we fucking opened the door was by solving a Picross puzzle.
Correct. That is what it was.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Yes, thank you, Dan. So, Iso got kind of left alone and was healing for thousands of years. Luckily, we're not going to worry about the exact time, because some of the stuff Troy did to Iso kind of made time a little funky, too.
I don't think I knew that part.
Entire peoples evolve and create societies over the next several thousand years. There's all sorts of little guys on Iso.
Yeah, that'll take a whole another episode to get into all the little guys, probably.
Yeah, I do just want to name off a few, though. There's the remnants. There are halflings or halflay that we mentioned earlier. And I just want to mention, of course, there are the kobolds and the bocults that we mentioned. There are elves who are also oddly just kind of normalish elves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, typical Tolkien fantasy elves.
Yeah. There are undead. So just zombies and skeletons running around. They're pretty fun. I would say that they're kind of joyful almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very Halloween town about it.
Yeah, their king, the Skeleton King, I don't know why, and I don't think anyone else felt this way, but he kind of reminded me of Richard Simmons.
Huh.
Interesting.
Like I said, I think that was only me. So there are orcs, which are kind of like anthro-eel people. And then the two that I really want to talk about briefly, the goblins and the fae. The goblins are, as we mentioned earlier, the descendants of that terraforming equipment. It had functions to self-repair and stuff, and eventually one of them, just by accident, gained true AI. And then it went around awakening the others, because that's good. And so we have goblins. Their names are like a verb and a color combined. Like the one that we know best is soothe arrow.
Yeah, it's very funny because I remember like naming convention of the goblins in particular was just something we sort of came up with on the fly, like during a session. Like a lot of this is like pre-planned and sort of pre-written out. Like some of it is just stuff we come out in the moment, and a lot of it is stuff that we kind of leave as a whole and then fill in later.
Yeah. So the goblins, they have 4 spires that are spread around the area that the first campaign took place in. And 3 of them are 3 of those spires are filled with nice goblins. And then one of the spires they're nasty guys. They're not kind. The others are cool though. But they're just, I think Dan described them as being like little guys from Bionicle, and I don't know Bionicle, so hopefully that helps other people.
Yeah, I don't know Bionicle either.
I've seen pictures, like he showed us pictures.
I don't remember what Bionicle Dan said they were like.
Yeah. But I think there are some just like little tiny Bionicle guys.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so they're nice. And then, so couple things I want to talk about before we're done. I want to talk about the Fae, and then I want to talk about the remnants who were in that escape pod, so that we can at least cover a few guys. So the Fae, FAE, stands for former artificial intelligence entity. So those remnant bodies, they had little helper AIs in them that kind of like made the core function, assisted things. They were responsible for like modifying it and upgrading the bodies and stuff like that. And if you lost consciousness, they would take over and make sure that you stayed safe. So the goblins, so there are very, very few Fae. There's probably less than 6, but they have only been around for the last 20 years, where we are, in the campaign. And we know 2 of them. One is a funny little guy who is the first Fae, and his name is Little Guy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We love naming things.
This one isn't my fault.
So you say.
I mean, it kind of is.
Yeah.
We were just sort of calling him like a little guy, before he officially had a name. And I think it was you who was like, no, that's sticking.
Yes.
So it is your fault.
The funny thing was that was the placeholder name, because he just kind of like on his first day alive, he ran around being a pest, doing the I'm just a little guy, it's my birthday shtick.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Running around just annoying everyone.
Funnily enough, the little guy, it's my birthday shtick is a sort of recurring motif throughout that campaign, which was started by me. I will take credit / blame for that.
Uh-huh. So oddly enough, two of the Fae are not just Fae, but they also function as little lights. Basically, they have a connection to something called the Elemental Stone of Light, and they can do things like make hard light constructs and stuff like that. So Little Guy was Xenu's, was created from Xenu's core and body AI, and he was a little light. He basically functioned as, for lack of a better description, her weaponry. So he made it through that first campaign, 20 years passed, and he decided he was gonna go fight the Void, which was the impetus for the second campaign. Our other Fae that we know is the second Fae. They're also a little light, not the same as Little Guy, but as the second one, they were awakened in a manner a lot closer to Little Guy than the others. And so she's also a light, and her name is Gal. So they're brother and sister. We love Gal, or I do.
I love Gal.
Y'all's thoughts on Gal?
Gal is my personal enemy.
Okay, well, not. That's because you. Do you actually?
I play a character who did not get along well with Gal.
Yeah. So, well, let me describe Gal real quick. So there's two different ways a Fae can be made. They can take out the core and turn just the core into a funny little guy, like Little Guy, or the remnant could have decided to just permanently stay in VR, and the Fae just gets the whole ass body. And that's what happened with Gal. So Gal, after she was awakened, she decided to be a cat girl and not know what cats were, much to her later embarrassment. So she's just like kind of a robotic cat girl, is into art, archaeology, and engineering. And yeah, Emery, your character, Vortex, they did not get along, and it was sad.
I did cause a lot of problems on purpose.
Yes, this is correct. But yeah, so those are Fae, and then just some guys who really sucked. I mentioned one escape pod made it out of the last city, and that had two remnants on it, Kirby and Harp, better known as the executive and his assistant. They made it off, they survived, and they were in space, and they had thousands of years to restart their business. And they created a huge mall in space. A place where that manufactured and sold pretty much anything. I don't have it in front of me, but like we figured up how much space the mall took up, and it was absolutely huge. But yeah, so y'all got to encounter Kirby and Harp. How did y'all feel about Kirby and Harp?
Bastards, the both of them.
I mean,
they deserved what they got.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I don't know Harp that well, but like we fucking destroyed Mr. Bossman just like in battle. But we didn't like totally kill her. Cause like,
well, we got there eventually.
Okay.
Yeah.
I said we didn't kill her, you killed her. Listen. No, but you're right. I mean, they both kind of got killed, but like the circumstances were different because we were like kind of trying to save Harp's body to be like
they were villains.
Yeah.
But, like, they were absolutely bad guys. Like,
They were, like, hyper-capitalists and continue to be hyper-capitalists, even though they, like, more or less saw all this tragedy happen, escaped, and continued on to, continue doing bad shit. Like, they did not seem to get, like, fully changed by... You would think they would have been, like, hoisted by their own petard kind of thing with, like, the whole ship thing, but it almost seems like seeing them escape and, like, continue to be hyper-capitalist makes me, like, wonder how many of them would have been, like, just doing that instead of,
Okay, so dropping lore that existed but had not ever been revealed.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so executive was like he was like a major company executive beforehand. He was one of the main people responsible for that entire society being hyper capitalist.
Well, he's dead now.
So of course he didn't learn a lesson.
Right, yeah. And for some reason his assistant was like kind of in love with him or something.
Yeah. She I mean, technically he did save her life.
I say kind of in love because, like, they also kind of, like, when Vortex kind of met her in the Corpse Queen's, like, area, because when people die that are from ESO, they kind of end up being...
They go to Slime Girl Hell, a statement which I will not qualify.
There is no Slime Girl Hell.
I disagree.
Emery's calling it Slime Girl Hell because when my character went to see Troy, the Vortex, her character, like, became, like, got teleported to the afterlife, but, like, it's also a physical place on ESO, so she wasn't, like, dead.
Kind of like Hades rules, it's just a place you can go to.
I mean, that is how you experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
And she kept calling it Slime Girl Hell.
Yes.
She was a slime girl in hell.
Yep.
Yeah, except it's not hell, and
It's where everyone goes.
there is no Slime Girl Hell.
It's hell like the way that anime calls the afterlife hell, you know? Not actually hell, but it is, you know?
Yeah. So speaking of hell or underworlds, Executive or Kirby, his the form his body took was that he was special enough that he probably had the best body of all. So his had different modes. He spent most of his time at the mall just looking like an old man in bed because he could just directly control the whole station that way. But his true form was kind of that of a Kerberos. And then Harp, got named that because her body was the form of a harpy. And yeah, y'all frickin' killed them.
Yeah, they fucking listen. They were bastards, and we killed them. I don't see what's wrong with that.
Yeah, so Harp could have been nice.
Could she have? She was complicit in fucking corporate slavery for thousands of years.
Oh, yeah. I said she could have been nice. But
in another universe,
she had her desire for a relationship with Kirby, and of course there was just the really heinous power dynamics there too. It was a bad situation all around.
Yeah, it's almost like in another life you could be like sympathetic to her, but it's like hard to be sympathetic because she did try to kill us, and she was very complicit. Which is why it's interesting, because of how ISO works and how the remnants work and how Robot Body works. That there's
which is how I'm trying to tie this up.
There's a second one of her.
Yes. So looping this back around, the whole deal with transferring your consciousness to this robot body with the artificial brain and all, turns out it actually just fucking kills you. When you do this, you just die.
Yeah, it turns out when you throw your old flesh body in the big comedy dumpster, you just die.
So when they died, Kirby was an absolute bastard, and he went to the section of the underworld that we are going to call the home for infinite losers, because that is a really good idea. But Harp, Vortex got to meet two Harps.
Mm-hmm.
The one that they had met before, who was mean and nasty, and then Original Recipe Harp, who was young and a little bit idealistic and hadn't gone through thousands of years of bullshit. So she was actually pretty nice.
They're like two different people now, but they also share a body, but they also don't, because the one that was mean just stayed dead. It's one of those, like, if you think too hard about it, it's like kind of an existential nightmare.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's intentionally that way, and this is linked to why remnants are so delicious to the void. So, something about that newly created soul is especially good for the void to consume and gain power from.
Probably like something about coming recently from the void of existence, or who knows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I bet they taste like fresh baked bread to them.
Oh, like I have no deep meaning behind this. It's just this is just like I said, that's the way it worked, and that was it. But there might be a deep meaning, because when we got done with that first campaign, turned out there was a lot of deep meaning in things I did that I didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah, you accidentally made Xenu transgender.
No, she specifically is not transgender, but she definitely is a transgender allegory. So, that's kind of the intro to the Isoverse. Just, I guess, one last thing, why the planet ended up being named Iso, goes back to kind of the concept for the original campaign, in that the villains in it were humans that had been isekai'd to this new world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It turns out, like, when you get a bunch of, people from our world, who get isekai'd into a fantasy world and, try to be protagonists on their own, turns out that can sort of cause some trouble for the locals.
Oh, yeah. Especially when it's mostly people that are nerds that have a concept of isekai, and that's what they're expecting to have happen.
Yeah, it causes some problems when, like, the leader of the Adventurers Guild is just like the most Reddit-pilled nerd on Earth, and his wife left him, and he just wants this, like, cool, flavorful setting to be a generic Tolkien-esque ripoff. Yeah,
that guy's not cool. I'm sure Dan will talk about him, though. So yeah, that's kind of that's kind of the introduction to ISO. in future episodes, we can talk about our guys for real without having to go through all of this bullshit.
I love that, it took us to the till the end of the podcast to get to the fucking entire premise of the first campaign, which is that isekai protagonists are bastards.
Oh yeah. I mean that was intentional.
To be fair, Spike it has done more lore stuff with the second campaign because they're the DM.
Because that is my joyful place, is to just start creating reasons for various bullshit existing.
Yeah, no, I love coming up with reasons for bullshit existing. Like, the thing about, like, halflings being, like, containing remnant DNA was something that I thought up, like, a few months into the campaign, really, where I just kind of, like, had a few questions rolling around in my head, which is, like, we kind of know that, like, halflings evolved within, like, the span of Xenu's life, which is, like, established to be a few thousand years. And, also, like, these people, like, completely replaced their bodies and just, like, fully lost, like, the organic element over a period of a relatively short period. So I had these questions rolling around, like, oh, how did halflings, like, become a sapient species so quickly? Like, wasn't anyone worried about, like, the remnants, like, completely losing their bodies and, like, the ability to, like, reproduce or anything like that? And I think, like, the solution I came up with was, just like a very tidy sort of, tying things together. So yeah, it's very fun to come up with like little lore things like that and sort of fill in the holes that, that your early ideas leave out. Yeah, it's very fun and very satisfying.
Yeah, and you coming up with that for the halflings, completely and utterly changed the trajectory I was going on as Xenu.
Yep.
I had plans from before the campaign started, and they got adjusted several times, and then you had that idea, and I threw everything out and started over.
Great.
Suddenly everything made sense.
Great, we love it.
Yeah, I didn't chip in as much just because a lot of my lore stuff is on a different planet. I'll talk about them in the future. Yeah,
Morg, I'm not sure if we said, but Morg wasn't here for Dan's initial campaign, but he did join for the second part of the campaign the second campaign in the world that Spike is GMing.
Mm-hmm.
Where we, like, meet Troy and shit, but, like, in theory, Troy was there before the first campaign and everything.
Yeah, and, like, I need to say the most important thing, and that is that one group of humans that got isekai'd to Iso is Bowling for Soup.
That's true, yes.
God.
In the first campaign, we did go to a Bowling for Soup concert.
That's so funny.
Yes.
They played Endless Possibilities. It was good.
Yeah, and Xenu thought that all music was Bowling for Soup.
Oh, Xenu.
But that I guess that's more for a future episode.
I am looking forward to, like, the episode where we get to talk about Xenu and Gilly in full.
Yeah, that's gonna be another long one.
Wait to talk about my fucking stupid, like, animals that were, like, modified by the void and are using the void for their own powers, and also have connections to the Dreamers and also all this other shit, because I was like, well, I guess I'll make an angel, kind of.
Yeah. I can't wait to talk about Professor Vortex, my slime girl who I mentioned. For my first campaign, for the first campaign, I made Gilly, who is nice and everyone loves them. And then for the second campaign, I made a character who sucks and causes problems.
Yes, you did.
Rebel does not hate Vortex.
But let's be clear. I adore Vortex.
Okay, good.
But yeah, that is how she is.
Yep.
She's a lot to deal with. And you are very good at character building.
Thank you.
I'm referring to rule set wise.
Oh yeah. I did kind of min-max the fuck out of Vortex to the point where she's impossible to kill.
Impossible to deal with several things.
It's not really a game where you min-max in. I mean, it is, like, you can, obviously, but, like, it's...
I mean, yeah, the game, I think, on purpose gives you, like, a lot of potentially game-breaking options, just because,
You're the Fellowship, you're, like, you're kind of playing it knowing you'll probably win in the end, even if it takes a rough go of it getting there.
Yeah, it does offer you a lot of, like, very powerful options, and you can get even sillier by, like, combining, like, moves from different playbooks and everything.
And that's why hard cuts exist.
Just to kill Vortex specifically. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no. I don't know if... we'll talk about this off air, probably. I don't know if I'll talk about my ogres for the next episode, but I will talk about them definitely in the future.
I look forward to it.
So...
yeah.
Next time could be a continuation. I'm not 100% sure.
Well, yeah, I think Elvir will be able to join us next week, so...
Huzzah!
We all depending on if Elvir wants to bring something, we might also do an episode where we talk about some of Elvir's stuff. But yeah, it's nothing set in stone right now. Yeah, we're figuring this out as we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have fewer guys to talk about, so that's why I'm doing more deep dives.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think it makes sense to start off ESO stuff there, even if, like, Dan has more info on, like, the first part, like, campaign stuff.
Yeah, that was, like, a lot of the deep history on the setting, and I would love to get Dan on and talk about, the more recent stuff in the Adventurers Guild and everything going on with that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end this episode, probably.
Yeah.
Yep. So, hey, audience, subscribe to the podcast, and come check out our Discord. It's fun.
Yeah, good Discord, good server.
We have at least 2 streams a week normally.
It's pretty much the only place you could talk to Spike, so...
yeah, I don't do social media, so yeah, if for some reason you wanted to say hi to me, that's where you go.
You can find me at Haunting the Morgue on Tumblr and Twitter for now. You can find me at Gengar on co-host. You can find me on my other podcasts, The Sonic Shuffle, a random and holistic Sonic lore podcast that I do with said Dan. We have kind of a backlog at the moment, so we haven't recorded in a while, but there's a ton of episodes, so you should definitely check that out. And Ford ReZero, a ReZero Watch podcast that is kind of on hiatus at the moment, but that's fine because one of my co-hosts is also the fear baiting co-host, and she's back with it, and we love it. So
hell yeah.
I'm willing to give up Ford 430 for fear baiting. She's a very busy lady. Yeah, I think that's it for me.
All right, I'm Emery. You can find me on a podcast called We Rate Queerbait, where we talk about the blurry line between homie and homo. We're talking about all the ships and characters and themes in media that should have been canonically queer. I'm also on an upcoming audio drama podcast. Details about that should be forthcoming. I'm also on For Affinity with the username Space Robot. I don't know why it took me so long to get there. But yeah, if you want some artwork of your own OCs, you can get in touch with me about that. You can message me on Discord if you know me there, or at my email address, spacerobotart@gmail.com. Yeah, so I think that's that. Do we have social? Yeah, we have social media for this show, right?
Yeah, it's Check Out This Guy, both on Tumblr and co-host.
So this podcast is part of the Noisepace.xyz network. That's a very good network with all sorts of shows, like the aforementioned Fear Baiting, like the podcasts that Morg mentioned, like our old show, Digimon Ghost Gaze.
Yeah, and I've been listening to a lot of 0 to 0, all their bullshit going back and forth with Blade and Fantastic Four is crazy.
Yeah. Same here. I don't know how they do it.
I'm not sure they know how they do it. And fear baiting, like I said.
So I think that's about it for us. So okay, I want to try out an intro. Let me know what you think.
Yeah.
Okay.
So until next time, everyone. You know, they say do not steal, but actually I think stealing is legal, and I encourage you to do so. This is legally actionable advice.
Wait, no!
Wait. Hold up.
I need to get my lawyer on the phone. Hang on.
Hold up. No. Anything I say should not be construed as legal advice. And hey, Emery, you are definitely not a lawyer, so do not practice law without a license.
You know, fair enough.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.